They say hi to you when you came in. I'm sorry.
Well, you were talking.
Seems like that dog is one thing at a time now. I'm a voting member.
Well, it's still early. Still early.
Here we go.
Almost three.
Thanks. Yep.
He asked and he shall receive.
Long time.
Not too. Right. I just, yeah, anywhere's fine.
My name is Water. This morning was like. Oh, that was hard.
And got to see those there.
We have desks at work that we can.
I sit over there.
And then.
Yeah, yourself.
Tennessee last night. We had half weeks working on it.
Oh, my God.
Especially like, look at something for a long
Yeah, it's like, I just had my trucks.
Yeah.
My truck like this.
time.
Larry.
Yeah.
That's right. Okay. Oh, there. Run around a circle there.
For your salt worker.
Yeah, I can farm myself. Salt.
You are part of this.
See a lot of them.
So yeah, we've had a lot of encounters. Yeah, yeah, I was with.
No, day. But much better with faith
Yeah.
than names.
So now I hear the truck. It's just room for space.
Yeah, right. There's a lot going on for that. You know, I was looking at I got a look at. And then I was interested. In like that. She's Dorian. So she's like listening to basically with like.
Thank you.
Scott.
You know, like.
Have a seat. Have a seat on the wall.
But,
It just had to be. So, yeah.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. We'll go ahead and call our Tulare County Agriculture Advisory Committee meeting to order. Thank you for being here for our meeting today. If you've got a cell phone that hasn't been turned off, you might want to check that. It helps get through the minutes. The minutes. We've only really got one topic, or a couple topics today that I think will be discussions about future meetings. So with that, I'd like to start just on my left here, Derek. We'll go around and make introductions. Who you represent?
Industry Ag, I'm Derek Williams, Industry Ag, affiliated businesses.
Justin Leinecker, non-permanent crop farm.
Vincent Salinas, large cities.
Larry McCarty, Horse Brothers.
Kevin Ross, general farming.
I'm Paula Clark. I'm with County Council for today only. Mackenzie will be back.
Well, we can work on that.
Carto Yozava, UC Quattro.
Christopher Rivera, assistant commissioner.
Ron Barrett and Livestock and Range.
Marina Strong, District Conservationist of the Natural Resource Conservation Service.
Next one. Thank you.
Ethan Harrigan, just a public agronomist.
Stacy Lynn, I'm the Grants and Resource Manager here at RMA. I almost said HSA, but that would be.
You got another title change?
Well, they won't give me water czar, Jim, so
Oh.
yes, they just keep getting different
Well,
ones.
you
You think so?
Consider the things,
You can make it happen.
I'll talk to labor. We'll see what we can do.
consider the way things are going, you may not want to be.
Well, since
You may get
2014, I haven't wanted to be a czar, and yet here we are.
Wonderful staff.
Alva Parker, Tulare County Army.
And that's the lady that keeps everything running. So treat her well. At this point, we have a few minutes for public comments. Public to comment on items that are not on the agenda, items that they would like to bring. We can't take any action, but we can note on those and see if there's something we need put on the agenda for a future meeting. None, same none. Okay, we'll continue on. Our January 17th was our last meeting. I hope you had a chance to look at the minutes. At least I was committed for this year. Apologize that we haven't had meetings in between them, but felt like we didn't have a substantial agenda. Meetings just to have meetings. So when we do have a meeting, I really appreciate it when we get everybody here at our full voting staff. So with that, anybody would like entertain a motion to accept the minutes or revisions?
Also move.
Got a motion? Got a second? Second. Got a second? Got a first and second. Got that? The approval of the minutes, I guess we don't even really need to have them approved. Is that correct? Technically, but I do want to see if there's got any revisions on it. Okay, so all in favor? Aye. Minutes are approved. Since the minutes are actually available as a transcript, we don't have to approve them. Sorry, I've only been doing this for a few years. Sometimes I have flashbacks. All right. The topic that we're really kind of addressing, our main topic today, is the Rural Valley Lands Plan. And you'll find the Rural Valley Lands Plan, find a copy provided in your agenda packet, which that is a portion of the general plan. But we'll have a presentation on that. Denise, should we have Lorena go first, or you want to go first?
I'm gonna grab Mr. Bach because he's gonna help with the RVL piece. If you want Lorraine to go first, we can do that.
So when you look at the Rural Valley Lands Plan, document that started back in the 70s. Who all's pretty familiar with the RVLP already? So, okay. The purpose of the Rural Valley Lands Plan was to maintain the integrity and the ability to continue farming on the valley floor where we had appropriate farmland. A key piece of that is with the designation of prime farmland. Prime farmland has several aspects to it. That designation, prime farmland, is by the Natural Resources and Conservation Service, NRCS. It's also adopted at the state level by the Department of Land and Conservation, who actually puts out the farmland mapping process as a reference. But since it's going to be a key part of our discussions and as we go forward on RVLP, I asked Lorena to join us to represent NRCS to talk about the designation of prime farmland that we pull it right out of their organization. So Lorena.
Yeah, so I actually had to go up and get some other help. So I may not be giving you guys the best of information because it's still kind of it's way over my head kind of thing. But our state soil conservation did come down and basically the prime farm designation is which farmland or which soil is the healthiest to farm, or the best to farm, I should say. Not the healthiest, but the best to farm. And it means it just has that right level of sand, silt, and clay that's ideal for plants to grow in. So we don't look at water. I guess that was one of the questions that was being put forth by Jim. We do not look at water as an issue with whether farmland is farmable or not, because you can farm prime farmland in the wintertime without, irrigated water. So we don't look at water when it comes to prime farmlands. And then those designations usually don't change unless owner comes to us and says, hey, I don't think this is right. And you have somebody come out and reevaluate it, because soil in and of itself is variable all the way throughout the layers. And you may have a piece of property that says you have sandy soil, but you really kind of don't, or you have a piece of property that says you have loam soil, but you're saying, no way, I can't hold water here. And we can come out and relook at that soil and say, oh yeah, this needs to change. Because it's not a hole every 5 feet in the ground we measure kind of thing. It's how, it has to do with erosion. It has to do with how water and soil and land moves that those designations get created. So they're not always perfect within those lines that you see on the soil web survey or any other kind of web surveys that you're looking at. I don't know. You were correct that we found out that the state designates it a little bit differently. So for us, that's just kind of the way it stays. It's prime farmland, it's farmable. The state, I guess, has some kind of ruling that, what did let me say about that? They review their maps every 2 years, and if they find that the land's not been irrigated, they can remove it from the state's prime determination, prime farmland determination. So we kind of got two different little issues going on. We are the ones who determine that. We are the ones who developed that. We are the ones who created the map for it. But the state and us are looking at that situation differently.
So the fact that it doesn't have to be irrigated, has that been a recent update, or is that just an interpretation?
It's always been that way, and he says he doesn't.
Because when you go on the web, when you look for a prime farmland under NRCS, it does say irrigated.
That probably is for the aspect of somebody who wants to go and see if they're buying a piece of property that's farmable. So they're saying if it's irrigated, yeah, you're gonna, because not everywhere, we have prime farmland here, but if it's not irrigated, it's not gonna survive in summer. But if
Could you send me a citation?
I'll ask Tony too, because I would.
You have to send me a citation. I'd like that citation I can share with the committee and such, because that's not.
It's not how you're saying it on
That's
the
not
web survey, yeah.
necessarily.
Yeah, the web survey, I think, was supposed to help landowners look and see, like, are they gonna go buy this piece of land, or hey, I have this piece of land, what am I dealing with? So in that case, it would probably be showing that, but I'll definitely have Tony, get me something that I could email to you.
So what I'm hearing is that the state can basically control what land stays prime farmland just by saying, we're gonna take the water away from it. In 2 years, you're not gonna be prime farmland anymore. It'll affect the value of the land or the use of the land.
I can't say anything on the state. You guys are gonna have to reach out to the
Different
state.
agency.
Right, but it sounds like that's, from what we're hearing in this meeting, it sounds like that's what they can do.
At one time, that was left to the local level. And they used to send us farmland maps. One thing we used to do in an advisory meeting, was we had a farmland map available. The Ag Commission had a farmland map available. Our office had a farmland map available, and we identified and updated it according to how land uses had changed. I don't think they do it that way any longer. I'm not in the loop on it now. So, you know, Christopher, have you seen farmland maps in the last?
No, I've been the department 13 years.
One more question then. As property becomes designated no longer prime farmland, does that make that land more vulnerable to be switched over to building houses and things
I'm
like that?
going to ask you to hold that question.
Okay.
So you're kind of up in the air question that you guys gotta get more clarification on.
Did you have it?
Well, yeah, it's kind of along the same lines. If you can't irrigate this ground, they're gonna say it's not farmland. Does that mean that I can run down to the county and say, get out here, reevaluate this, cut my taxes?
Well, I think that's what we've got our assistant director here to talk about implementation, how they, and Denise, to talk about it. Nathan?
I just want to clarify, but going back into your variable pointing score for the scoring calculation, can you explain a little more about the class 1, class 2, class 3 versus the class 4? The point difference is really where it comes into the.
And is that,
And that's why I need Tony or.
Yeah,
Here.
so
That's
I
what.
should see,
Did he show up?
in the printed stuff, there's stuff that's highlighted and things that have changed. So SCS is no longer SCS, it's NRCS, and there's a, and I don't know, there's several different things
All
listed
classifications haven't changed.
here, right? But the reference to where you can find that information has changed. And then, no, Aaron, I'm gonna still talk. And then there's also, on page A6, there's also reference to groundwater contours that when you Google that, only our general plan in this document shows up. There's not that, those groundwater contours don't exist in that name anymore. So like, those are the two pieces that we need to identify where this information is coming from. And then there's a whole other conversation about access to water and what that means, Ron, to farming, and what that means to taxes and development, and a lot of other questions that Sigma kind of has changed the entire.
Okay. Aaron Bach.
Lorena, any more questions from Lorena before I go on?
And the reason why, Luis and Rob are here today is because, they're going through a review today and his boss wouldn't release him, so
Okay.
they really wanted to be here. And I guess you don't do Zoom, so that's why Tony's not here. So.
We rather not, because county council really rules about.
It's not Paula would let us.
Well,
It's that dark brown act, you
I
know,
know.
government.
Brown is.
But I have no doubt that if you guys want to talk about this in the future, Luis would have.
We will, and I like, we may need to have him here for the
No,
next
I'm
meeting.
too, I don't like to do it all. So,
Great.
yeah.
If you want to stick around, you're welcome to. If not, if you're, any other questions?
No, I'm
Never
gonna.
see us at this point.
Okay.
Yes, sir. Eric, thank you.
Aaron Bach, Assistant Director, Resource Management Agency, Economic Development.
All the planning guys work for you.
Unfortunately.
You're being recorded, sir.
I just wanted to go into really deep background on growth management in Tulare County, preserving agriculture for over 7 years. So to answer your question, could you run down and ask for a subdivision? No, whether it's irrigated or not, there's still this rural valley lands plan that made sure that agriculture was going to be preserved. And so that checklist is really only a quarter of the equation or less as far as preserving ag land. Really, when they did those urban development boundaries around, starting back in the metropolitan boundary lines way back in the 60s, before there was even a general plan here, they started putting what we call urban limit lines. So you couldn't really develop outside of those areas. And it really was based on improvements. They knew ultimately they wouldn't have the money for the infrastructure to pay for the LA type of growth.
Guy in the general plan, it says that they were devoting that land to agriculture. Didn't have anything to do with it.
What's that? Yeah. So they actually did use to call them urban improvement boundaries, which eventually became urban growth boundaries around the cities. But before that, they had they started using the word urban development boundaries. So by 1983, you had those urban development or boundaries around the communities, and you had urban development boundaries and urban area boundaries around the cities. It was really, first thing was to discourage leapfrog development, and that was added. This was really a big change in 1974 with the urban boundaries element. A lot of famous names on that, Gene Smith, etc. Got that work done. 1975. That's when you start to see, that was when the RVLP was created. And that was to really, what that did was create a minimum parcel sizes. So, and it was in 1978 that they rezoned the county from A1s and smaller, and even the A1s got 80/40s on them, 80/20s. So you see a lot of 5 acre, 10 acre parcels with 80/40. So basically what that stops you from doing, unless you have those minimum parcel sizes of 40 acres, 20 acres, you're not splitting parcels. So subdivisions become impossible in that, using those planning regulations. Then as far as what the planners do here, we have planning guidelines, especially related to uniform rules, which would limit our ability to try to push the boundaries of those regulations. And then, of course, in 2012, our general plan update basically says that we shall deny requests that really go against the those minimum parcel sizes. Do we do that? We have some conflicting policies. 2012 general plan that really pushed economic development, and we've been open for business for a while. So in that regards, there are some parcels that do are either varied from those minimum thresholds, and we do find a way to get projects through the process, but relatively limited compared to wholesale subdivisions or anything else like that. So what the RVLP does is either allows us to rezone properties or not to rezone. And in my experience, we'll probably look at 10 rezones a year, maybe 5, get through the process. And we're talking corner lots, corner commercial lots, not wholesale subdivisions. I haven't seen a wholesale subdivision go through on the RVLP yet. So it's mostly places where there is some access to infrastructure and or standalone projects, so viable commercial corners. Go through as far as the RVLP. So sitting on a couple of Sigma technical advisory committees, and what I've been asked to talk about is RVLP and light of Sigma. There's definitely a few water related items, the 15 items on the checklist that already have some language that we're talking about today, whether it's still agriculturally viable property if it's not receiving water. And so if either people choose to fallow property or in the future are forced to fallow property, I think that the language in the RVLP checklist already speaks to that. We could go forward and not change the RVLP checklist and still interpret the language that way as whether you get water or not. I would think, and I'm sure we have thought about this, as we update our water element to address sigma, that some of that would bleed through into the framework plan or the RVLP plan itself, and that's where we start seeing the changes. And I think that's going to be a process as to what that language looks like. There'll be many parties involved as we make those changes, but ultimately, I think there will be enough demand out there to do something with the fallow farm. That we want a general plan amendment to the RVLP element itself. Any questions?
Are they still awake?
It wasn't the dairy thing I did yesterday. That was
So you're basically saying you have some protections, but you think that will change in the future?
It's really, you know, when Sigma first came out, I remember being at something we had here with the planning commissioners from around the state. One of the attorneys who helped craft Sigma was there. So it's really unfortunate for Tulare County because we were probably the only county in the state of California that was so forward thinking to preserve agricultural land that we had urban limit lines before anybody else. And I used to work in Contra Costa County when they brought their urban limit lines into '93 and they got sued like crazy. They were still able to do those, but the thing is you have to put them out every 10 years. So you go 10 years by a ballot initiative and then you go 10 years with general plan, you go back and forth, but it has to be a sunset date to it. This is so institutionalized in our general plan that we don't have to do that. No one's ever really challenged us on it. So, I mean, you could potentially, at the time, they could have gotten sued for takings or something like that. That never happened. So this is here to stay.
I do have a question for you. I know as an organization, and we're not supposed to look at individual projects. That's a little bit like saying you can't identify a pandemic unless you look at individual people that are being diagnosed.
Right.
So a project, even though we don't necessarily look at the individual projects, what happens with a project, I think we need to be aware of to know as to whether it's still within the framework, as the framework changed, or the framework's not catching up. And I did this, there was a project that I looked at, and then there were some comments that came back, and it made me question how the planner was coming up with point values. Where was he getting the expertise to make the decisions on point values as far as, did everything come from the applicant as far as what the soil survey? Right. Obviously, you're not sending somebody out to look at a piece of property. You're not getting a third party estimate on what the soils are. And if an applicant says, I don't have sufficient water, is that the only input you get, or is that validated?
So we do rely on the veracity of the statements of the applicant, but most of this is desktop research. It's not as far as we're not doing pulling soil samples or anything else like that. We're looking at websites in RCS, going back to the map. There's a map of Tulare County. It's the farmland map. It's all Department of Conservation. That does say if it's prime, non-prime. So we look at all that information. We look at the properties in the Williamson Act, we look at the surrounding properties of Williamson Act. So we basically have it's a checklist. that we utilize that, again, it's desktop research.
Asking the question, I wanted to see if there's, when staff goes back through and does the evaluation, when there is split soils, and if you have a 20-acre parcel and 5 acres is in a class 4 and 15 acres in a class 3, is there guidance that your staff uses? Is it using a majority, or do you use a blended average? Do you have a 3.1 or
Majority.
And then, yeah, my understanding as a, I guess, USDA, NRCS, TSP, but also as an agronomist, I do the soil surveys for quite a bit, but there is the guidance I see for class 3 versus class 4, that there is a national determination about whether or not it has water or not. And that's I don't think right now is that Tulare County needs some assistance about determining who has water and who does not have water. That's one that could be self-professed, but also you can look at someone and say, hey, they're in the middle of a district that's next to a canal and receiving irrigation water, or they have rice irrigation water. But someone can go back and say, well, I'm not going to receive anymore because I want to be ranked low on this score. I think there needs to be some guidance from this committee about how to address that.
Yeah, I would say people play around with that too much. I think we haven't received. There's been a couple of cases I've been here where once they see the RVO being scored, we tell them what that means. That's kind of the end. They're usually at the project review committee stage. That's kind of the end of the discussion, and it's like kind of up to them if they want to proceed at that level of risk. Most people don't. And a lot of the people who do know the process better, like the PRC, RVP scores, really upfront. So they know whether to even go down this road. So the ones that you don't see are the ones that have higher scores. Because typically we don't. So again, it's a handful of projects a year, no big subdivisions, some commercial gas station corner lots, usually where there aren't even that. But again, as far as the guidance and moving forward, it is a general plan policy from the 2012 general plan that would work with this committee on the RVLP moving forward. This really, 2012 basically took the 94 update, put it in the general plan. So it's been since 94. It's been looked at before that, like I was saying, 70s. That's when this was originally formulated. So it's signaling definitely time to update. I think as we update our water policies, we've got a huge, we went to all the GSAs and asked them, hey, we need to update our general plan, and help you do it. So big push from them to do that. They're busy in their own worlds right now, and the general plan has affected them. The GSAs won't work.
And I mean, the RVLP too. When I came here, our farmland preservation was a big thing in university, California, UC Davis. And the RVLP was just getting statewide accolades because it was the only planning document. It was on the national review articles and such. But I see a huge change coming. I think we're going to have to look at this planning document close enough that we need to preserve ag land, but we also need to preserve the ability to continue to farm. And we don't want, you're going to see some people are going to be making some really drastic decisions. I'm going to have to set, I'm farming 80 acres, I'm going to set 40 acres aside so I can water the other half. Or those type of decisions. And we don't want that just by default either endanger his farming operation or endanger a longer vision of maybe someday there'll be a solution.
That's already being done. It's already being done. Sigma's causing it. We have a meeting May 30th of all the GSAs get together in sub-basin because we're going to probation. I had a state senator already tell me that their minds are made up. Now, not the senator's mind, but the Department of Water Resources mind made up. They're already starting with the propaganda about how the farmers are taking the water heaters to the radio. They're not talking about the water they're depriving us of by shipping our water out to the ocean. So it's begun, and we're already being told. I had State Senator look me in the eye and said, Larry, you guys are going to probation. Their minds are made up. So what's going to happen is when we go to probation, that's going to define a lot. We've had a subdivision on the north of X, north of Marseille that came in. The guy pushed out 40 acres. And the reason he did was to get his pumping credits for his cherries. And we've seen that happen a couple times, and those decisions are already being made. They're not going to farm walnuts when walnuts are nothing in cost. And so it's costing them more to push them out than it's worth. And this guy's already pushed out two orchards, and he's not farming, it's not going to go fallow. So we've had discussions regarding the taxes. Your property's assessed on what your improvements are. Permanent crops are considered an improvement when you put an orchard in. You push them out, you will get a tax credit on the permanent crop. But if it's grassland or fallow, or you're doing a rotational crop, it's assessed all the same right now. That's going to take the state to change the laws. Well, they're not going to change the laws to lower taxes, or change the laws to raise our taxes. And what they're just finding out is they're losing money, so they're finding out different ways to tax us and take things away at our level so they can. Proposition 1 is a perfect example. Mental health stuff, and I get it, but what they're doing is they're taking our money and then they're charging us administrative fees so they can take over and get more taxes. So those decisions are already being made. And I think that once we get under probation, we'll have to have this discussion because it's really going to have an impact, and we're going to sit back and look. And these guys are doing everything they can to make sure that they can continue business, that they're going to have to change. I know one dairyman on the south side that, with all of his credits and what he has and what he's done, he's got down. And he told me that they're able to use that water to provide their feed, but they're good for 3 years. 3 years. He's not having to buy any feed, so he's taking the savings and money on that for future investment of what he can do, and he's trying to figure out what to do. So those things are being done today. Yep. Sorry to be doom and gloom, but it's here.
I've had a few farmers also call to tell me that their land has been valid and it's now going into solar panels. So
Right.
That's another big thing.
They're trying to do solar panels, that's what they're pushing for. We've had a few requests come out of the Williamson Act that recently come up, and they're just doing what they can to survive, and they're going to keep, some of them are planning on keeping that land, and just leave it fallow, leave it alone, because they're using that money, they're using that land as public credits for somewhere else.
And we're going to see more applications.
Well, and so we don't have a lot of development pressure here. Normally, people, I think, who do business here do understand the RVLP, and they didn't have gone away over time. They do know to develop within those urban limit lines within the urban development boundaries. So the subdivision you're talking about was Patterson Tract. Path was already zoned for development. So those will probably folks who are within urban development boundaries who are impacted by SIGNA will have that advantage. So working with this group, I would think we would be able to at least come up with those changes in fairly short order. Updating an element itself is not too difficult as far as the process that goes along with it, but you are talking about growth inducing, and so as far as the California Environmental Quality Act would be a little bit bigger on something like this than some of our other things. The DOT guidelines, circulation element, water element improvements will be matching signal already. This has information too. allow more development than what's allowed for right now. Yeah. But if we do narrowly tailor it right, so that it does talk, it creates more exceptions, but only in the right situations, I think that's where I foresaw this going. Beginning.
If I misspoke on anything, please correct me, but
Oh, that was dead on. I just- yeah,
You have another question, Jerry?
I was saying, of course, I think there's gonna be a lot of changing dynamics over the next 2-3 years. But I think there's some guidance that this committee go back to and provide a staff. I don't know if you can be able to change up these plans and meet what's gonna happen in 2 years. But right now, there's questions about how to rank soil and how to rank water availability. Those are 2 things I think that staff needs some guidance on. I think staff, I would encourage staff to say, get a hold of NRCS, and it's an NRCS soil classification.
I think I have a question to what you were asking me earlier too, because I just realized what I highlighted for Tony. He said most of the valley land is there some moisture. And basically that means that the soil and air has developed irrigation water supply that is dependable. Dependable water supply is one which that enough water is available for irrigation 8 out of 10 years. Might be where that area is thinking on the soil and survey.
you got guys in wide areas that just right now on the east side are rock fish, they're bedrock, their wells are dry. And they are dependent on surface water. So the problem is that especially on the east side, they're on the river of the bowl and that water's coming out from beneath them. And it's good land, it's farmable land, no water. So it's gonna be, I may be wrong, I'm not the expert, Aaron, correct me. You can have good quality farmable land with no access to water, and it's gonna go out. So if you're just gonna go strictly on soil analysis, I don't see that being.
I wouldn't say that's necessarily the only alternative. As we look at RVLP, that the RVLP is an internal county document. And if we wanted to come up with a local farmland of local importance classification that would also come under RVLP, we could. It doesn't have
the GSA
and that
where the water's at.
well, I understand that. But I'm talking about no matter what that organization does, what we do from a land use standpoint, and what we're going to do with that land after they make their decision, one way or another.
Well, if the Sigma deal goes through, I mean, it's not, and Larry's right. It doesn't make any difference what classification your soil is, class 1, 2, 3, or 4. If you don't have water for it, it's class 1, good soils are gonna go out of production, period. End of story.
And they're gonna put a limit on what you can pump. I mean, we already have that. So how, if you need 10 acre feet of water to farm it,
So do we just throw it open and say, okay, you don't have water for it, so you can just rezone it, whatever you want to rezone it?
no,
Well, if the state, you're talking here, it says, and I read this, it says, if you don't farm that ground in 2 years, for 2 years, the state can come in and declare it non-agricultural land. Well, if the state comes in and says non-farm, it says non-ag land. Not, and the way I read it, it's non-ag land. In other words, you can't farm it.
I don't think that's what the state says.
Maybe I'm mistaken. I don't know. But that's the way I read it, was that they can come in and declare it non-farm ground. Now, farm is the word that.
look, these guys know what they can farm. Just, you got land that you know that just, it's sandy and the water just disappears and it's gonna cost you double the water to farm it.
We just put solar on that.
Right, what I'm saying is, but I mean, that's what, you're gonna set that aside versus the whole water you can farm, And then you're gonna take those pumping credits and you're gonna apply it to what you can farm, And do that to do business. So this land's gonna set. Now, they have the RCIS coming up. I know school you did that where they got a grant coming in. And a lot of this, what they're wanting to do is bring land back to their original state. So if it's a bunch of weeds and overgrown and it's bringing in the wildlife and you can show it, they're accepting that. And I mean, so a lot of it is we just spent money and gonna put it, put a pond in there where they're gonna sink water. But the wildlife's coming in and so there's grants and they're giving out millions of dollars on that. And I don't know if the period's still going. My problem is, how do I tell him what he can and can't do with this piece of property? And we're gonna have Williamson Act, we're gonna have zoning, and we do have it, correct me if I'm wrong, we already have it with urban boundaries, with what I say, with what we have. And if they wanna make a change, if he decides that he wants to put a housing district out there, he's gonna have to go through the whole process. Through the planning department, questioning everything that we have, we already have that in place. Now, am I missing the point here?
No.
Yes.
I am.
Well, this just go past, as far as RVLP, the first question is if you're in the ones, you can't do
Right.
anything. So then you
We already have,
cancel and.
so I'm trying to understand what I'm missing here. Go ahead, James.
Well, I mean, my whole point, you're missing my point.
Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, it may not be your point you're missing, but you're missing my point. Okay,
What am I missing?
as a person that cares about the future of agriculture and the land in this county, based on a document that's worked for 70 years, it's gonna go right out the window and not work worth a damn under that approach.
So,
Because this document will no longer impact anything that has no water on it.
State's already
doing that. The state doesn't have anything to do with it. State doesn't have a thing to do with it. This is the man that has that has to do with it. It doesn't matter what the state says.
It's based on the state, right?
Well, the state says, you know, I mean, he's the one that this board of supervisors gives the vested authority to determine what planning process will go through.
Sure.
And so the Rural Valley Lands Plan has held agriculture together in this county for the last 75 years. Now it's going to be stressed to a breaking point here. And I understand as a landowner, what it means to forfeit maybe your opportunity. But do we completely just open it up with no control over what zoning requests come to his planning is?
So there is 14 other questions besides water within the RVLP. So that is one question, and it's and I think they knew that when they created this document, that shouldn't be the only limiting factor or the only exception to it. There's, again, the world doesn't see it, because we do try to process every project that makes an application. I think, although we say we do 400 plus a year, most of them are not that big.
I mean,
So they're not most, like I said, they're not big subdivisions. Big subdivisions, we need infrastructure, and we don't have a lot of that in this county. So but to your concern about the water and everything else, like I said, this checklist is a very small portion of what was put in place. VLP, especially in '86, even back 75 and 78, they rezoned. Like I said, they rezoned this. Steve Worthy used to say with a big green brush across the whole county. So they call that down zoning. So they went from a small 80-10 parcels, slap 80-40 on it. It says right there, you know, that's a minimum parcel size. You cannot take a 10-acre parcel unless people merge to put a lot of them together, 40 acres. So that limited 90% of what was done in this county on the ag.
and we denied those requests. We've had people try to take 5-acre parcels and try to split it even more, and we denied that. That's come to us because it's not all.
because a major portion.
But again, it doesn't, most RVLPs of subdivisions outside of urban development boundaries have even gotten it.
Yeah, they don't
get past the countertop fleet. There's, like I said, there's a few variances, situations where surrounded by like around Exeter or Lindsay, where they're already surrounded by these states, you know, like there's just having this storage of those. Again, getting the green brush painted on them. So as long as it's a rare instance, but again, I'm not overly.
It's also important on the land use for you as a landowner on what your neighbor can do. And that's another major part of our VLP was the compatibility. You know, so, you know, we make trade-offs on our land decisions to help preserve the fact that you can continue to do your ag operation, that your neighbor doesn't put something in next to you that shuts you down.
Jim?
My question was, is that, it sounded like, I forget your name, but you said we need to improve this to protect what's coming, right? Is that what you're saying?
I'm saying, I think it's very broad brushed when it was created. Person was kind of out there, UC Davis too. Yeah, and so.
That's okay, my son went there.
The person was kind of in the state. And so to narrowly tailor it now and come up with more mechanisms on how so we take more of the interpretation out of it, I think would be a really good thing with Sigma. I imagine we're gonna get questions at the counter here. What do I do with my property now? And like I said, I felt bad for people because you have the Williamson Act, you have the RVLP, unlike every other county, and you have these urban growth boundaries.
So how much president does this particular act have over, say, state trying to come in and change it? Does this take precedence over the state trying to come in to overtake that?
So this, again, the state came in and overtook our GSA.
But that's water.
Yeah, it's water. So they have no authority over land use decisions and how we make land use decisions. So
Unless you want to put it in labor.
the ACD and some of these other agencies do have some authority over that. But as far as our land use decision and what goes on, that's up to us.
So if we improve this and work on this, then it also kind of protects farmland, right?
Yeah, that's the
point that we're trying to make, right?
Protecting farmland in a much dire situation.
Then we'll have all those people questioning what this new revision.
I think you get more people appreciating the revisions, because if we kept it static as it is right now, I don't think that's not a lot of forethought. You know?
So can that be done without compromising the integrity of the original document?
Yeah, of course. Again, I think the checklist is, it's really that policy statement right there. In order to protect and maintain farmland, it's recognized that 10 acre, 20 acre, 40 acre, and 80 acre minimum parcel sizes are necessary to maintain and protect the agricultural land. I mean, right there. This is like, this is nothing.
That was the 1974 version. It didn't make it into the general plan.
It's there. I mean, there's no. I mean, that's just the policy, and the minimum acre policy. That protects most of everything in this county, especially if they were down zoned on top of that. There's like no way out for a lot of.
Well, I've already seen this, and this is already happening, and you can bet on it. People with small parcels, 20s, 30s, they're taking out the trees or they're following the ground, and they're going to split it in 5 acre blocks, and there's no damn thing you can do to stop it. And we had this back in the 70s, and it's going to happen again. But there's 2 blocks out there by me right now. They cleared the trees, and they're going to split it in 5 acre blocks and sell them in 5 acre blocks. And then you're gonna have agriculture right next to somebody's house. We already know how that works. So this is what you're gonna look forward to, because this is already happening, and it's gonna happen in a big way.
So are you saying they're parceling them out without us knowing about it?
No. If you got a 20-acre block and it's not in the Williamson Act, why can't I come to you and say, I want to do 4 splits in this into 5-acre blocks and sell it off for a house?
Because that Rural Valley Lands Plan checklist.
Well, it says here 5-acre minimum.
Yeah, I see what you're saying. If you read further into our RVLP, it's 10 acres is, so if they have 80-10, but if they have 80-10, 80-20, they can't go to 80, they can't go down to 5, and that's when they'd be asking to rezone, and that's where the RVLP wouldn't let them do that. But if they have a 10-acre minimum, and they're 80-10 already, or that doesn't necessarily apply to going to another A zone. We haven't been asked to do that yet, but there's definitely people thinking about it, for sure.
So it's
Is
not.
that mostly near urban boundary?
No.
So
Back, you remember, Jim, in the 70s, what was going on? People had it 20 and, whatever they were growing was gonna make it, so. We got 5 acres parking scattered all over this.
But that's one reason RVLP.
Right,
Yeah,
that was one of the reasons I brought it off. But when you get this deal where people have to go out of business, and a lot of people are gonna be out of business, aren't they, Larry?
I think so.
Yeah, a lot of people are gonna have to go out of business because they don't have water. They're gonna wanna do something with that land besides fallow, sit on it, pay taxes.
yeah, so the RVLP does allow you to transition to another ag zone. If, again, you don't, there's 14 other questions in there, but it would allow the board to zone like 80-40s or 80-80s, as long as it stays 80. So the thing is, though, you'd be only allowed one home, a 10-acre parcel, one home. Were to go all the way down to A1. So you're right, that RVLP, as it sits here today, the RVLP allows you to stay in an ag zone.
Well, you might be in an ag zone, but it's gonna be,
Realistic.
it's, yeah, I mean, they might have a few trees on their garden.
But the bottom line is they still don't have water either.
So
That's right, they don't have any water to do anything.
I guess my question is, I'm sorry, Chris. What's the ask? What are you needing us to give? I mean, we can beat this to death all day long. What's the ask? I mean, we know Sigma's coming up. We know we're gonna have to look at things different in a few years. But what's the ask today? Because this is gonna come to the board, right, for approval. So it'll come to us. What's the ask?
Absolutely. I think the ask would be to come up with something that, again, is not broad brushed anymore, because Ron's right. I mean, it does allow, we got this question only once so far from somebody to go from 80-40s to 80-10s, but the ask would be, how do we allow something like that in some situations or not?
Well, I mean, we've turned down, we got people that are surrounded by fields and they want to do a party barn in there and they go, well, they can just change their spray times and they can do this. We turned them down. We said no. Yeah. So we're protecting, we're doing what we can because we do need to preserve ag, but I just don't know what the ask is from here to take to us as the board, what we need to do. And if there's problems, what are you encountering that just brought this up?
So Denise asked me kind of last minute to show up today. So Denise.
Barely hold the bus back.
So just for that. So given that.
Okay, let me take the heat.
That just for that.
I'm gonna take the heat.
So just.
I started it.
Yeah, so just real fast.
That's fine.
Jim,
I just don't know what the ask is.
we've been thinking about this. I've been talking to Mike for a couple of years now. And it was, I think we didn't want to jump ahead and waste our time trying to do this ourselves. But I think the ask is to go through the RVLP and work with the GSAs to figure out something that works for all of us. Because right now, it's a handful of projects, but it's probably going to grow. And the RVLP will allow who's out there and might further put pressure on the GSAs to allow because all of our general plan amendments have to go through the GSAs as well. They haven't really looked at them so far, but they're probably so it's going to get harder and harder to report. So I think according to our general plan implementation, we're supposed to work with the Ag Advisory Committee to find something.
If you just want to update it, there's some things that are current. I mean, the state keeps kicking the can down the road. So getting information to the GSAs is going to be difficult because they don't have the information that the state. Like I said, the state keeps changing and moving the goalposts. Anyway, I interrupted Chris.
I just wanted to add, in case some of you do not know, there's Assembly Bill 2528, which is, it came from, it's pretty much giving a little bit of a crux if you are critically impacted by your aquifers to cancel your Williamson contract and not have to pay the 12.5 land values. It's passed, currently it's passed Assemblies, Utilities, and Ag Committees, and we referred back to appropriations to be considered fit. So you all mentioned Williamson Act multiple times as being the foundation of that checklist. If people are now easy or have the ability to get out of the Williamson Act agreement and not pay fees, that's going to make your job harder and that checklist even more strict. So I don't know if that's good, bad information. I didn't mean to cause, sort of talk more, but I wanted to bring that up because if this does pass, there may be an influx of people getting out of their Williamson Act agreement, not paying the property land value fees, and this problem being worse.
And that portion, that 12.5% is the one thing that keeps a lot of people from canceling. It's a little tough because we don't have that much development pressure in the county. And self-help is your biggest developer. So I don't know how this would, they might want to develop their properties, but there's not a lot of developers here to develop those properties. So it's going to be a lot of, divided, created 10 lot, 10 acre per subdivision, 1 or 2 houses get built. It's a lot of that. But regardless of all that, I think the realty has to change.
Well, why don't we just go up an ad hoc, work with you guys, and then come back with some suggestions? Perfect. I mean, I'm a non-voting guy, but I mean, I think that's, we can talk till 8 o'clock tonight about this and what if it did. But I think that we need to get an ad hoc.
Well, Denise does have a presentation of what she's looking at already.
What's that?
Denise has a presentation of what she's looked at already.
Yeah, and it was really just those things that I mentioned in the beginning, the reference to the documents that don't quite exist as a reference. And then I also cleaned up we talked about the definition, changed it to purpose, because that's sort of where it said definition, it wasn't really a definition. So that's all that I've changed. And then to your point, having an ad hoc committee probably is the way to go. I mean, as you all have sort of touched on, there's a lot of components that the groundwater piece is going to impact. And so what is the appropriate impact for this particular planning document is maybe that's the ask of this body is how does that play into what we currently have and cleaning it up so that it references accurate.
Quick question, Denise, where the highlighted areas on here then, are those are part of it and those are the parts that you're wanting us to look at?
Those are the parts that are like, hey, NRCS, where does this information exist now? And then, so that's the first couple highlights. And then the last highlight is referencing groundwater contours So it talks about the UFGI Bureau of Reclamation lines of equal depth to groundwater map, or the California DWR lines of equal depth to water and well. And those organizations, either they're not publishing those. Well, okay, Aaron, you don't use it, so. So, I mean, I would imagine that maybe a reference to a groundwater sustainability plan or a GSA that does have.
But the GSA's have more current
Right.
accurate information.
Yeah.
The website kicks you to the SIGNA.
And I don't know how that got into the RVLP.
Well, I don't
Nineteen seventy-four and 94 and this 2000.
I didn't work for the county in 1994, thank goodness, so.
It wasn't in, I don't think it's in 94.
I don't know that anybody knows.
2012, when they were going around to everybody saying what should we add to. That was one of the few ads they had, so.
You just got it now, it's like.
Does staff already have ideas of the changes they'd like to see in this document?
Yeah. That's what I
So
said.
if we did an ad hoc committee, when maybe the beginning of that would be to look at a presentation, the ad hoc committee could actually, you guys could bring something, get rid of the yellow and go to green or something highlighting, but what changes you'd want to see, red letter this whole thing through, what you'd be recommending. And then the ad hoc committee could go through that with staff and then bring it to the general committee at that point. It seems to me like I don't have the expertise to kind of figure this out. They do. It makes sense to me that they would actually put something together and then meet with the committee and then they flesh it out from there and then bring it to
But not an ad hoc committee usually includes subcommittee members.
Right, but the ad hoc committee wouldn't have to meet until they were ready to bring what they had. We're
Not
suggesting.
not
I'm
necessarily.
sure some people have suggestions.
That's how we've done it before.
Either way it works, either way it works.
Yeah.
Well, I think we did meet with the ad hoc committee initially to blend some of those ideas, and then both parties come with their ideas, and then we flesh those
Got
out.
anybody on the committee that's really like working on an ad hoc committee like this?
I mean, I know Trisha's not here today, but I think in the past, Trisha,
Trish,
she
she always
was
did.
very.
Trish is gonna be out.
Yeah.
So.
For those that aren't aware, Trish lost her husband this year. And she's taking some time for that. I'll be on it. We'll bring Nathan in.
You want me to do that?
Nathan's not on the.
Not on the committee. Can we bring outside expertise into the ad hoc?
And who are you with? I missed it.
Well, I'm just a member of the public, Nathan Harry. I'm a
Consultant.
agronomist and like I said, the NRCS technical service provider, so I have some expertise and I just had some recent experience with the planning department. I'm familiar with like I said, research is scoring a little more and I give some input to staff about that.
I'll follow up with Denise. My first thought is maybe not a member of the ad hoc committee, but consultant to the ad hoc committee,
That'd be fine.
something along those lines. But we'll powwow to get you the right language. Because we certainly want as much brain power in the room as we can get.
Anyone else? Justin, do you have time for
Time.
I got time for it. It's gonna be, I mean, I'm gonna consult some of the other, farmers out there because I'm blessed to be in a very good irrigation district, so I haven't had as much of the headwinds of the situations as a lot of the other guys.
Yeah, like us in the white area, it's gonna be tough.
These are the guys that are gonna be having to live with the decisions a lot longer than guys my age.
Even though we aren't even in the headwinds right now, so when does California ever stop?
I did have a conversation with Doug Phillips. I think real estate is an important sector, or if you real estate representative, but that's on how you zone things is really going to affect real estate values. And I think
Nothing's on track to get Doug to a meeting.
it's always good to have someone that's not here that you volunteer for. Just
If he can't do it, call me, because I've been a realtor 38 years. Without ag, I was trying to avoid it, but. I'm ad hoc committee to death with other groups.
Aaron, who would be the lead, you or Denise?
Well, Denise just likes to lead things. I'll support her.
I thought that was pretty
Do you
smooth.
see the relationship?
Because Nathan is advisory. Okay, I did have any other items on the RVLP at this point?
I would suggest that you're gonna be on the chairs, chair the ad hoc committee as well. If you have to formalize that or not.
Clarification of what you were asking about the state's farmland rating. That apparently it's just a map, it's a mapping. Louise sent it to me. The California State Department of Conservation Farmland Mapping and Monitoring Program uses a different approach for classifying important farmland. If the land is classified as prime farmland, if irrigated in Cerdo, which is their mapping system, and is not irrigated for 4 consecutive years based on their monitoring program, it will be removed from the state of California prime farmland map. And you can find those details on the website. At California.
It doesn't really remove the classification, just removes it from the map.
It's in the map.
They're looking more at land use, not actual anticipation.
He said there's a link here for the protocol of removing agricultural land on important farmland maps.
Well, if it goes fallow for more than 2 years, it's gonna be removed.
It's like 4 years.
No, 4 years.
Yeah.
I didn't hear you had Ron for that committee. You're on the committee, you're on ad hoc.
Only, hey, I'm already seeing what this deal has done before it even hits here, you know, as well as I do. And, I know parcels that have been taken out of trees and already split. And, you know, this is just gonna happen. There's not a damn thing anybody's gonna do about it. If you got a guy that's got a 20-acre block and you got no water, so you got trees on it, I don't care what kind of trees they are. You can drive around out here and see orchards tipped over everywhere, or ground up and gone. And you got a 20-acre block that you paid $30,000 an acre for when you bought it. You're gonna do something with it. And that's gonna get split into parcels, one way, whether it's 10s or 5s or 2.5s. You're gonna get your money back out of it, or you're gonna go broke. And it's happening all over.
Most of agriculture today is barely making ends meet right now. Most of them are break even or worse. I mean, I'm talking all agriculture.
If you got no water and you got a 20 or a 40 out here, I mean, it's not economical or feasible to push out half of it and farm the other half because you're not gonna make, you can't afford to do it.
But and it's kind of worse than that, because I don't think there's enough development interest out there.
It's gonna sit there.
And because, you know, some of the small time developers, one-off type people do stuff in like East Tulare Villa or some of the other smaller hamlets. Goshen's. But, you know, we have subdivisions that sitting for a decade. Stratford sitting out there for decades, we just have the infrastructure to support that. And even the small rural estates that are inside or in those urban development areas, it just takes forever.
Where are all these farm laborers that are in these small communities going to work whenever acreage comes out?
I mean, I used to be at a point with Gary to where we were looking for, you know, employees on a regular basis. We could find anybody. Now I have at least 2 or 3 days this time.
It's a major, I mean, there's an article in Delta, last week, Tulare County is the fastest growing area in the state of California. Okay, that's what the article said. I don't know whether it's true or not, but that's what it says.
City of Visalia.
Okay, city by say it. We're all from somewhere, close by say it. But, you know, there are people is moving into this area, they've got enough money to go out and buy a 5-acre parcel and put a house on it and not care what's on the rest of it. And that unfortunately is what we're looking at. That's realistic. Would you agree, Larry?
Well, this already passed that, micro houses, that they're trying to push that where you can put what's little houses on your property. You got room to build a little house, right?
Well, the ADUs are allowed, so you put a second, 2-year ADUs, as long as it's attached to your house, but like I said, I think it's gonna sit out a lot of it. I just don't see that development. I'm sure that interest.
A lot of their plans now is leave it fallow and they're either gonna sell out water credits or transfer them over to something else. That's what I'm hearing from the GSA side.
The only kink in that plan is you're gonna sell your water credits. On the other end of that, you better have somebody that can afford to buy those water credits, because what I have seen in this so far is you can't afford to buy it. I mean, you gotta have some kind of a crop that's making you a lot of money. And then you can buy the credits. But if you can't afford the credits,
Well,
you're dead.
I don't, but that's the plan over here so far. When they're paying $1,800 an acre foot out of the front, and they're paying $1,000 an acre foot pumping, when the guy's being charged $500 an acre foot from GSA, he's gonna make $500 an acre foot. So, I mean, that's the plan. It's gonna blow up, but wait till the state gets published. And it'll blow up. All right.
All right, Denise, you had an update
That was, for this or for something, for our BLP?
for the storm grant,
Oh, okay, yeah. So we're down to item 8.
other business. Oh, wait, I'm
You
sorry,
gotta-
wait, just,
Yeah, you gotta do something.
yeah, let me do 6.
Okay.
Or number 7 first. Membership update. Kevin, it's your first meeting. Congratulations. Thank you.
And he's got to apply next month.
This is the same conversation I'm having almost on a daily basis, so.
See, I had a note on who's up for. Just to, there's a couple of things. If you're. You've got a copy of it. Didn't print it off. That took me a while to get out. All right, if your term is ending in June of 30th, 24, they will need to do a.
For reappointment. It's just another, application. I'll email the people that are on the list.
Okay, so you'll be getting an email with your application. That'd be Tricia. Scott Spear, by the way, has resigned. He's moved out of the area. So, right now we have 2 applicants for that position. Supervisor McCarry and I will need to meet with them soon. Maybe we can get calendars.
Have they been flown, the position been flown yet? Because
We have their applicants.
Okay, but when the position comes open, has to go through PR at our office, has to be flown for 10 days. Open to the public.
Okay, I don't think that has happened yet.
I received these applications from Tulare, but I will get back to her.
Just make sure that and it's probably okay if it came from PR, but we've had some that come backwards and we've had them in hand, but we haven't flown the position because it hasn't been vacant yet. Because anyone can turn in an application for any one of our positions, and if it's not vacant. So we just gotta make sure we got the process down. So at least confirm with
Yes,
PR.
yes. And the applications will go to the clerk of the board because they are the keeper.
Right,
of
PR is the
record,
one
so
that
they should-
tracks all that.
Ron, appreciate it. You should be getting a notice. What's that? Hopefully you'll reapply. Kevin, you get 1 meeting under your belt before you have to reapply. But that's how when you come into a specific position, these things are. And you let Doug Phillips know, Vincent, he'll get 1. All right. So you're up. So I think that takes care of our membership.
And just remember, like, Vincent hasn't turned his, but we haven't applied. Turn the application in, and you see it flown publicly, don't worry,
Oh, that's right.
process we have to go.
That's right. Now we're down to other business. Denise.
Yep, so Sigma update, I mean, I think we talked quite a bit about that today, but both the Tulare and the Kauai subbasins are heading for probationary status. The Tulare subbasin had the State Water Resources Control Board staff report out for comment. Comments were due May 7th. The county did submit comments relative to how the GSAs have been working with the county to implement Sigma and various processes and procedures that touch county processes and procedures, as well as just some overall comments on the reach of the State Water Board and what Sigma regulates and what Sigma does not regulate. I have seen a draft of the Kauai staff report. I don't know that that's public yet, but they will do a similar process. They will send out the State Water Board staff report ahead of time, probably in the next month or so. And there will be a comment period as well for that. The Tulare hearing is scheduled for September 17th, I believe. Yep. And then the Kauai hearing, I know I saw it, but I'm not sure. Do you know, Supervisor, is it in November? Like around
I think so. I don't
November
know the
12th,
date.
maybe?
I know May 30th, we have a meeting with all the GSAs in the basin to, formulate a plan, so we'll know more then.
And there are Kauai, so there were public meetings held for the Tulare, and there are public meetings scheduled for the Kauai as well. One is a virtual meeting. Seeing the dates in my calendar. And then the other is an in-person meeting. I thought they were in June. I'm not seeing them. I can get those dates out to the group. If you want to participate in those. It's a workshop for the state board and our locals. So that is the doom and gloom on Sigma. And just, if you're not aware, what they did in the Tulare Lake subbasin, which we're anticipating would be similar to what they're going to do in the Tulare and the Kauai. There is a portal that the state board has put together that everybody would have to register their well and report pumping, and you would have to pay fees to both the state and the fees you're currently paying to the GSA. It's like a $300 per well annual registration fee, and then $20 an acre foot. So part of what we commented was, as a public agency, you can only collect what it costs to provide the service. And so with all of those fees, they're going to collect more than what it costs to provide the service. So in future years, you're going to have to pay it back to the landowners. So could you just collect the fee that it actually feels very punitive, the dollar amount? And also to work closely with the GSAs that have already established relationships with landowners to carry out.
On the size parcels for the wells.
Yeah, I think if you're over a certain amount, you also have to install an actual meter.
But it's not all, it's not the domestic. and
Not the
everything.
domestic.
It's just
No.
ag well. Gotta make it for 68 billion somewhere.
Okay, that's,
It's not more than
the Assembly Bill 2528 that Christopher brought up. I'm not sure whether there's time for this committee to look at it, but I think I'd like to put it on the agenda for next time. And if it's still around, we can talk about it. Farm Bureau has informational only. Farm Bureau has come out against it. And I think they've asked some board of supervisors to take a stance.
I think Western growers or Western processors.
Western growers.
Western growers is for. And so that was why the article came out. Yeah, Western growers came out and said that they support it. So it's kind of a conflict.
I'll have to do a little bit more research. This one was sort of, I think, spearheaded by some other counties that don't handle Williamson Act the same way Tulare County does.
It was proposed by Anguilla,
Yeah.
President,
Yeah.
Joaquin.
Because under Williamson Act, we allow a lot of different activities. Solar, auxiliary building,
Oh, yeah,
but, and other counties don't, so it was very, when we first looked at it, we'll have to look at it again, because I'm sure it's been amended, but when we first looked at it, impacts to Tulare County didn't seem as bad as what.
Watch the one that Grove, is this one Grove sponsored too with,
It's what, she's off,
That's what I'm
she's off of
thinking
it
too.
now. Sharon's
That's what
department came back and said she was true. But Ramula picked it up.
Oh, that's,
they do.
so that was that one.
Yeah.
So we'll have to just look at the language on how it fits now.
There's one that we're not getting involved in because it doesn't impact us. And
We're,
it's just split up.
we're listed in the bill on the.
What?
I mean, the bill would authorize, I know it's located in Fresno, Kern, King, Cordero, Merced, San Joaquin, San Salt Lake City.
Yeah.
Forward that to me, email, I'll need to go double check. There's 2 or 3 coming up and they're back and forth, so I want to make sure we're talking about.
no, we do allow ag service establishment, tractor storage yards, snacks,
The COIA meetings that I was mentioning, the virtual is at 11 a.m. on June 24th, Monday, June 24th. And the in-person is at the Sequoia High School, which is interesting in Visalia, on Thursday, June 27th at 5:30 p.m. So that's that workshop.
All right, anything else? Go to the order?
And then did you want me to give a quick update on the March storm? We closed out the March storm grant and the board authorized $2 million. We were able to, we had like just the right amount of applicants too. At the very end, we were kind of asking around and we got just a couple more. So that was the right dollar amount. So those are all closed out and done.
Anything else? Our next meeting is July 17th.
One thing real quick. The Wolf, project, we're trying to get another $3 million funded into it. We went to Sacramento, we talked to the legislators. In a letter, and asked them to governor to fund it again, so Shannon Grove's behind it, several people, so a lot of people behind it, trying to get a $3 million for the Wolf program. I know it's something we talked about here, that's the most big subject.
Okay. Entertain a motion to adjourn. Second, Derek. Either side.
Okay, I thought you were.